Hello, I'm David Poppers. I'm a professor of medicine in the Division of Gastroenterology at NYU Langone Health and the NYU Grossman School of Medicine in New York, where I also direct GI quality and strategic initiatives. I've been in clinical practice now for nearly 20 years with an interest in a number of different areas within the gastrointestinal tract, including the small intestine. I'm passionate about novel technologies, novel diagnostics, and therapeutics, and it's my pleasure to speak with you today.
Beautiful, beautiful. So before, before using the Navicam, before learning about it, how were you handling small bowel evaluations in what you did? So whenever I ask you a question, just answer it with the question when you first begin it. So just say, before discovering Navicam and having any kind of that technology, and then just go through it from there.
So prior to using the Navicam SB system, I utilized a variety of techniques for the diagnosis and therapeutics of small intestinal disease, including cross-sectional imaging such as CT and MR enterography, the use of deep enteroscopy such as single balloon or double balloon enteroscopy, as well as pre-existing systems for small bowel investigation, including some of the longer standing capsule endoscopy systems that are currently and still on the market.
So speaking about those, were there ever, I mean, whenever there's kind of like a general standard in the industry, you kind of have to just take the lumps and just say, okay. So what were some of the concerns or what were some of the things that before you had learned about the Navicam system, what were some of the things that you would wish that were out there? What were some of the troubles that you were just like, golly, if it was only this, I would be better. I would love it more. Is there anything like that? So how I would start that is just saying, during the, you know, as I was using the previous versions of the industry standard of all these evaluations, and then boom.
Prior to utilizing the Navicam SB system from ANX, there were a lot of issues that I was hoping over time technology would improve, and that has largely been borne out. So, for example, one issue always was the amount of time it took for data to be uploaded from a recording device that the patient wore was sometimes so onerous that it delayed the time to actually interpret the study, delaying the potential for diagnosis and therapeutic intervention. In addition, every device can fail, and we always have been hoping for a lower failure rate for these technologies, including some of the pre-existing and still existing small bowel capsule systems. And of course, most importantly, the diagnostic accuracy, both the sensitivity and specificity for any diagnostic imaging modality, in this case, capsule endoscopy, is something that we've always hoped would improve over time and have largely found that, fortunately, in the Navicam SB system.
Beautiful. So what first got your attention about the Navicam system? I'm sure that was like a dream come true kind of thing when it came to, the diagnostic side, the accuracy, the time that you no longer had to spend on the back end. So, what was the first thing that really got your attention? Because any new technology can be kind of scary and kind of be like, sounds a little too good to be true. They're, just kind of with the bumps and bruises of new technology. So, with that in mind, what first got your attention whenever you heard about Navicam?
Well, in terms of what first grabbed my attention in terms of Navicam SB was its promise, which it has largely delivered on, to improve upon a number of the issues that exist with the current um, to date small bowel video capsule study systems. So, namely, the ability to more reliably distinguish between a true endoscopic finding and an artifact, number one. Number two, to improve the efficiency of the interpretation of studies, allowing for more timely diagnosis and, if appropriate, subsequent endoscopic or other intervention. And number three, the ability to allow the times of the uploading of the data to be much more efficient, allowing for, when appropriate, same-day interpretation of the study. In addition to those main factors, those were really the main factors, I would say. The ability to have a longer duration of the study, a longer battery life of the device, a device that was lighter, more portable, easier for patients to wear. These are some of the secondary benefits that I've learned over the past year or so that I've been actively using the Navicam system. But initially, and still today, I would say the primary ones are diagnostic accuracy, meaning both sensitivity and specificity, the ability to read a study in a much, much shortened time compared with the industry standard, and also for the data to be uploaded in a manner that was much more rapid, allowing for the more timely interpretation of studies and the next steps.
Beautiful. So speaking on the time portion, from a doctor's perspective and from a clinician's perspective and the the office perspective and the patient perspective, how important is time? Because I hear you say time a lot, and that's the main thing about Navicam system that has really been great is that it kind of it goes the whole board of saving time and being able to make sure things are working more efficiently in a timely manner. So talk about that. I would start it by saying, when it comes to diagnosing or evaluating, as you know, time is the one thing that we all wish we had more of. And then I would just kind of start it with that and then kind of lead into how time is great on the whole full circle.
Absolutely. Well, in terms of time being, as philosophers would say, the only true limited commodity that we have, not just in medicine, but in life, time is really critical. Time is critical for patients who are looking for answers for diagnoses and next steps in their treatment. Time is essential for busy clinicians who are busier than ever in terms of the throughput, the efficiency that we need in order to see ever more complex patients, both in the inpatient and the outpatient setting. So the advantages of saving time is not just a convenience. It really translates to clinical improvement, better outcomes. So for physicians, it allows us to read studies in a more timely manner to allow us to get the answers that we need for the next steps in our patient's evaluation, whether that's an endoscopic procedure, surgery, additional imaging, or perhaps just reassurance and conservative management and further observation. For patients, even more importantly, time is critical because we see patients at their most vulnerable. Even though this is something that we do as physicians and clinical professionals all the time, each patient has this experience as something relatively new or novel. So there's a lot of anxiety and fear, and anything that we can do to increase the efficiency, the timeliness of the interpretation of these studies to help either assuage their fears or get them to the next step in their diagnosis, workup, or therapy is really critical. So, time savings, as I said, is really much more than just convenience. It helps us get our answers. It helps us help our patients feel better about the next steps, really, in their workup, management, and treatment. And it allows us also to get more patients in to see us, and patients who are waiting for our expert opinions, they have more access to us. So it improves that individual patient's workup outcomes, and it also allows other patients to get in for their evaluations. So it helps on a more global or population scale as well.
Beautiful. So, what was it like? I'm going to kind of lump these two together. You've answered some things. I'm kind of jumping around, Stu. Sorry about that. But I wanted to kind of keep it in a chronological.
Oh no, that's all fine. No, this is
Okay,
good.
cool. So I'm just reading to see. I'm going to ask this one and then I'm going to lump a couple of questions together because you speak really well about it. And I think that you'll touch on these anyways. So the first one is, what was it like the first time you used ProScan? You know, it's a new technology. You're thinking that it's going to have a crazy learning curve, So what was it like the very first time you used it, and how I would start that and say, one of the greatest things about the system, not only is it efficient, does it, give us back some things that, we can't really get back as time, but the switch from doing something industry standard and bringing it into something new, the transition was nowhere near what I thought it would probably be. Something like that.
Mhm. Okay.
And then kind of go into just the first time. It doesn't have to be crazy long-winded, but just talk about the ease of use, the easy transition for teams, for yourself, for patients, and just kind of give us those like bullet points of those really hard-hitting things, why someone would be like, well, I need to switch now.
In terms of the switch from the prior standard, if you will, on capsule endoscopy to Navicam SB was actually quite seamless. I think in adopting a new technology, or in this case, an established technology with significant technological enhancements, such as ProScan, the AI component, and others, I think there's always a concern, how long will it take me to feel comfortable interpreting these studies? I've become an expert on another system. So I think that's always a concern. It turned out really not to be a concern. The learning curve was not at all steep. It was very shallow. I will say that obviously, the more experienced that one is on another capsule endoscopy platform, as I was, the easier that transition can and should be. I also tend to view myself as an early trialist and, when appropriate, an early adopter of new technologies. I was very excited about all the different features and enhancements that we've been speaking about in terms of Navicam SB. In terms of the ProScan, the AI component, particularly so, as AI is in so many areas, obviously within medicine, but within every aspect of life at this point, and increasingly so. And it is a fantastic tool. It doesn't replace good judgment and observation from experienced clinicians, endoscopists, capsule endoscopists, but it really is a very, very useful tool. So I think I won't even use the word trepidation, my early, butterflies, if you will, about that transition vanished very, very quickly. And I became very, very comfortable with it really after a couple of studies. To be honest, the interface is similar enough to the other platforms by design, I'm sure, to help aid that transition so that the enhancements are there, but that the core is actually very similar to what someone would have experienced had he or she been experienced in the capsule endoscopy space as I am. So I think that concern disappeared very, very quickly. And in terms of the staff who assist in the office, the medical assistants, the nurses, it's actually been very, very seamless as well. We're supported very much by the team at ANX Robotica that came to help us and still does support us. But I think the ease of setting up for patients is really, really straightforward for the patients, for the staff. We may touch on it later, but I'll just mention as side benefits of the system, the ability for the team, meaning the nurses, the technicians, the physician in my case, and the patient himself or herself to actually see in real time after the pill ingestion, to see it in real time go down the esophagus into the stomach, I think is very gratifying for all of us. More importantly, and patients do find that interesting, but more importantly, when a patient returns at the end of the day, we are not flying blind. We can plug the system directly into a tablet and determine the location of the capsule. So is the Navicam SB capsule in the colon, indicating at that point that it's been a complete small bowel enteroscopic study, or is it still in the small intestine? And that really has been very beneficial. Number one, again, we get back to the element of time. If a patient comes back early, and we can plug that patient into the system and look in real time at the tablet and say, look, it's actually already in the colon. You're early. That gives that patient time, and then it gives us time to read the study. That's a tremendous advantage. And then on the flip side, again, going to time, which you may use later on in our discussion, in the rather uncommon situation where the camera, the pill, remains in the small intestine at the predetermined time. Because of the longer battery life of the device, we have the option at that point to have the patient wear the device longer and come back later. And what this really has done is increase dramatically the percentage of time that we have a full enteroscopic view rather than having to send patients for x-rays to make sure the pill has passed when we realize it has been an incomplete study. So we can both save time and studies early if the study is complete. And we can also, again, really use time optimally for us and for our patients and say, you know what, you need a little bit more time on this study, but it's time that the patient now hasn't wasted because they will much more likely have a complete study. So there are a lot of other advantages that I've been learning about over the past year or so where we've been engaged in the system.